Hi Jeff, welcome to From the Stage Door. Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
Just going to start with a few questions about your career background. I'm sure everyone is familiar with it anyway, but
Yep.
I'll just do it quickly. So have you always had a passion for theatre and performance?
No, I never was interested in the slightest in the theatre until I was about 15 or 16 years old. And because I'm 6 feet tall, I was this big when I was 15. And I was, as a youth, I had spots all over the face, big teeth, but bottle-ended glasses, and no self-confidence whatsoever. And my friend Peter, when I was growing up in Walsall with Peter, he came to me one day. We were going to this rather boring youth club, and he came to me and said, I found this amateur dramatics group, that they do, they get. I said, what do you mean amateur? What's that about? But it's for under 21s, he said, and we were teenagers at the time. And I said, well, what do they do? And he said, well, they have play readings and they put plays on. And I said, what do you mean act? And, with me at the time, the last thing on God's earth I expected I would ever do was stand up in front of people and perform. And then he said to me those key words. He said, the girls are very pretty. And I said, well, what time do you want me? And that was the start of it, really. And I went along, and he was right. Some of the girls were very pretty, and I got involved with it, and I was doing a reading of a play, and I could hear laughter when I was talking, and I thought, this is nice. I like some of this because it was doing my self-confidence a hell of a boost. And I got stuck into it, and I've never looked back, really. That was sort of when I was 15 and in the amateur days, and I did about 3 years in amateur. Then I went off to train at a drama school in Birmingham, and I spent 3 very happy years there. And I was lucky enough to get into rep at the time, 1968, when I came out of college, and there was still lots of rep about then, repertory. And I went to the Belgrade in Coventry. And so I didn't really leave the Midlands for quite a number of years, and then I got stuck in there and learned my trade. Literally learned my trade, doing everything. So that was how I began, really.
So what was your first professional job? What play was it? A play or?
Yes, it was actually. While I was still a student. I was able to get my equity card because while I was still a student in Birmingham, they wanted some chaps to appear in a play at the Alexandra Theatre there. It was a courtroom drama starring Richard Green of the old Robin Hood fame and the black and white 50. It's still being shown today on Talking Pictures TV, The Adventures of Robin Hood. And he hadn't been on stage for about 12, 14 years. And he was playing the self-defending accused in a courtroom drama called No Fear or Favour. And I was booked to play the judge's clerk in that, very small part, and me and a couple of other lads from the college. And because of that, we were able to get our equity cards before we left college. So that was a good thing at the time. And the first night, my professional debut actually in the theatre, the first night of that happened to be my 21st birthday. And I bought the cast a drink in the bar after the show. I bought everyone in the cast a drink, and it came to the equivalent of, in today's money, of 78 pence. It was 17 shillings and threepence in old. And that was a whole round of drinks. I hadn't got enough cash in my pocket, so I had to write a check for it. But that was a long time ago. 1967, that was. Yeah.
So
that's my first pro job.
Yeah. Who would you say was your greatest influence growing up? Not necessarily acting-wise, just generally in life.
Growing up, oh, that's a good one. I suppose my childhood hero was Superman. I used to go and rush to the corner shop and get my Superman comics every month. So, you know, he was my hero, because wearing big glasses, you see, I used to identify with Clark Kent. And I used to think, there's underneath me, there's a Superman somewhere, you know, just itching to get out. But that was my childhood fun, Superman. But, you know, I had a fairly normal childhood, really, growing up in post-war Walsall. And yeah, we lived in a little terrace street, rather like Coronation Street, and a very small little house, me and my brother and my mum and dad. And yeah, it's pretty normal upbringing, really.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
That's easy. Be yourself.
Yeah.
Terry Scott told me that. I worked with Terry Scott quite a few times. He wasn't an easy man to work with. He was very, very difficult. And but he asked, I asked him once, you know, what do you think I should do with this particular part I was playing? And he said, be yourself. You know, be yourself, and you can't go wrong. Be true to yourself. And that was the best piece of advice I've ever been given, really. I always try to do that whenever I work. And it seems to be paying. It seems to have paid off.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you've worked with quite a few comedy legends over the years. Who was the most interesting to work with?
Oh, interesting. As I say, Terry Scott was interesting. I learned a lot from him, actually. I say he wasn't an easy man to work with, but I learned a lot from him about, particularly about playing pantomime dame, because he was a fantastic pantomime dame in his time, and really all the people that I have worked with in fascinating. I did a couple of Shakespeare's at the BBC when they were doing them back in the late 70s. And I worked with John Gielgud there, Derek Jacobi, people like that, which were, you know, it was quite an education, watching people like that work at close quarters. And yeah, I learned a lot from them too. So I've been very lucky with people I've worked with. In fact, I've worked with so many people, but we're trying to work on a book at the moment that I've decided to call I've Worked With Him. No, I work with them. I work with them, because I kept hearing myself say, when I was doing a play a few years ago at the Menia Chocolate Factory in London, I was sitting in a dressing room with 3 other actors, and they were talking about people that they'd worked with, and, you know, over the years. And I kept hearing myself say, "Oh, I worked with him. Oh, no, I worked with her. I worked with him. Yeah, I worked with them." You know, and I thought, well, it's true. I have. I've been very lucky with the people I've worked with. I've worked with so many big people. Wonderful experience. And, you know, when you ask me a question, I can't think of one now off the top of my head, you know. But, you know, to have worked with Gielgud twice I've worked with Gielgud. He was once in a Shakespeare when he played John of Gaunt in Richard II. And then a second time was a charity pantomime at Drury Lane in London. Oh, wow. Matthew Kelly and I were the broker's men. Donald Sindon was the wicked squire, and John Gielgud guested as the King of Gooseland. Wow. And he did a duet with Elton John. Yeah, they sang "Me and My Shadow," you know, that old song, together as a duet. And it was hysterical to stand in the wings and watch those two together. Elton John was in a great big silver crinoline frock as a dame, or sort of dame. And Gielgud was dressed in this goose costume, which was most peculiar. And it was just a fascinating thing to stand and watch them do "Me and My Shadow." It's fabulous. Brilliant. Yeah, I've been very lucky. Yeah.
So, do you still get nerves, and how do you deal with them when you're performing?
I'm very lucky, you know. I don't normally get nervous. I get apprehensive, obviously, particularly on the first night when, you know, you haven't been out there before. You've rehearsed 3 weeks or whatever, and you go out there for the first time, particularly with a comedy. You don't quite know whether the laughs are going to come, or when they do, if they do, when and how long they last. So you're working on your feet by the seat of your pants on the first night. I don't get nervous if I know the lines and everything's fine. But I get a bit apprehensive, but I'm very lucky in that respect. I don't suffer from stage fright, don't normally. Touch wood, it never happens, but yeah, I know I'm fine normally.
Do you have any...
When I did Brassed Off a couple of years ago, the one...
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, when I did Brassed Off a couple of years ago, the one thing I was nervous about was conducting the brass band.
Yeah.
You know, I've never done anything like that before, and I just wanted to follow me and make sure everything went. You know, I didn't let them down, in fact. But it all seemed to work out in the end. Yeah,
it did. So, do you have any dressing room rituals or superstitions?
No, I don't actually. I've never been theatrically superstitious because most of the superstitions in the theatre are practical things that, you know, if you did them, like whistling in the dressing room or whistling backstage, they say, oh, that's bad luck, that's bad luck. It's not bad luck. It's because in the old days, in the Georgian times and early Victorian times in the theatre, cues were given by whistle. You know, if you peeped on a whistle or two peeps on a whistle, you know, a piece of scenery would float in. You know, and sometimes if you whistled in the wings, the fireman might hear it and think that's my cue, and down comes a piece of scenery and hits somebody on the head. You know, it's as simple things as that. And knitting as well, knitting in the wings is forbidden, absolutely forbidden. There are reasons for that too. And one is the clickety clack of the needles, you know, and very distracting if you're on stage trying to work. And the other story I heard about that was in a ballet performance once. One of the boys was, you know, branjetting around the stage, and he had to do a great leap into the wings, make his exit. And his dresser was sitting in the wings knitting, and as he jumped into the wings, he impaled himself on a knitting needle. You know, and that's superstitious and bad luck.
Yeah.
But they, you know, they're all very practical things. You know, the Scottish play that is the only one I'm funny about. I never quote from that inside a theatre. I try not to do it anywhere really, because it's always a little bit, you know, with the three witches and all the bad luck about it. But it's a very dangerous play for actors. You know, it's full of fighting and swords, and you know, people have had accidents, and they say, "Oh, it's that play. It's bad luck. It's bad luck." But it's not. It's the way you deal with it. It's just the way you deal with it. But superstition, no, it's not. I laugh at them really, except the Scottish play.
Yeah. What would you say has been your most challenging role to date?
My most challenging role? Oh, that's a good one. I suppose my one-man show, really, my Stan Laurel show, which I've been doing for the last few years. That was quite an undertaking when I did it, because it actually is a 27-page monologue with just me and no one else, except I've got Oliver Hardy lying in a makeshift bed on the stage with me, so I don't feel I'm alone out there. But I suppose it was my most challenging role to date, particularly on the first time I did it at the Camden Festival, at the Gatehouse Theatre in Highgate in London. And I'd got four performances that week to do, and by performance number 4, I was getting a bit relaxed, I should say, and a bit cocky, I suppose, a bit indulgent. I actually heard a laugh happen, and I instead, because you know, with one-man show, you have to cue yourself into the next bit. You know, it's full of non sequiturs, so you have to think of what's coming next and give yourself a cue of some sort. And one this particular night, I spoke this line, made a gag, a joke line, and I heard a laugh, and I thought, oh, that's a nice laugh, better than the one I got last night. This is me thinking, it's not concentrating at all. And then I suddenly realized I didn't know what came next. I had absolutely no idea what came next, because I hadn't cued myself into the next bit. And I had to ask for a line from the stage manager. He was in the gallery above me as it happened, so he could see me and hear me, and I could hear him. And I asked for a line in a very loud voice, and he gave it to me, and I said, thank you, and I carried on. And I had some friends in that day. And we were having a drink in the bar after the show. And I said, I'm so sorry about that dry. You know, really, but I said, what dry? He said, well, I had to ask for a line. Oh, they said, we thought that was part of the show. Well, I was silly. Nothing to do with anything. I mean, why did they think that? But I suppose it was because I did it with conviction. That was part of my training. I mean, if you're going to do something, do it with conviction. So I did, and I got away with it. But that's never happened again. You know, that was my greatest undertaking, I think, my one-man show. And I'm looking forward to doing it again as soon as we can get back into the theatres, you know, in safety and do it again. I want to go back to Edinburgh with it this year. 21 in August. I hope we'll be safe by then. So look forward to a vaccine sooner or later. I'm in the high risk group, so I should get one fairly soon, I hope. We'll see.
So obviously you've done a lot of roles, but what would your dream role or dream show to be a part of?
A dream show to be a part of? Well, I don't really know the answer to that, because I mean, my dream show always was my Mr. Laurel show, Stan Laurel's, and I'm doing it now. I've achieved that ambition. I had to wait 40 years. I had the idea back in the 1970s about doing a show about Stan Laurel, because I've always been a fan of Laurel and Hardy all my life since I was a small boy. And back in the 70s, BBC started to show Laurel and Hardy on BBC Two at about 6 o'clock in the evening. And I was thinking at the time it would be a wonderful thing to do a one-man show about Stan, because his story, his backstory is fascinating. I always knew the details of it. And of course, nobody had ever done a one-man show about half a double act before. So that was a new idea. But of course, I was only a young man at the time, so I knew I couldn't do it at that stage, because you can't tell a life story till you've had a life, you know. So I literally waited over 40 years to get that show on its feet. And I think it was well worth the wait, because I'm thoroughly enjoying it now, and it goes down very well whenever I go out there to do it. So I do a question and answer too for the second half, you know, because it runs just an hour, and we have an interval. So that the theatre can sell some drinks at the bar, basically. That's what it's about, taking money, you know. They keep themselves going by doing that. And then when I come out, I change, and I come out for a second half and have a Q&A with the audience. I tell a few little stories about Stan and Ollie and whatever, you know, things that go on, and how he got started on stage, things like that. And then I invite questions, and it's fascinating, because most people want to know more about Laurel and Hardy when I go through the play, and I get the odd question about my Heidi and Urangmill TV career, you know, but not many. But it's fascinating. That's what I really enjoy it. So the answer to your question is I've done what I set out to achieve. So as long as I can go on and keep useful, you know, keep working as long as people want me, you know. So it's just fingers crossed, we carry on.
What has been the funniest thing that's happened to you on stage?
Oh, the most embarrassing thing was in a pantomime. You see, because I wear these glasses, you know, I don't when I'm on stage, I take them off, and I got my Panto outfit all done up, and I had to on this particular pantomime production, I had to pick on a man in the front row and flirt with him, because dressed as the Dame, you know. And everyone's a blur without these. Everyone's a blur, just a pink blur. And I picked what I saw of this masculine figure sitting on the front row with a child on the lap. And I said, "You, sir, what's your name?" Nothing. And I said, "Come on, what's your name? What's your name?" "No, you. What's your name? Tell me your name. You know, you with a child on your lap. Tell me." I was getting heated now, because he wouldn't say anything. And then this feminine voice came over and said, "Tracy." It was a woman. I'd picked on a rather large lady, and I didn't know. And of course, everyone behind, all the kids on the stage behind me, thought this is the funniest thing ever. Well, I said, moving swiftly on, and then we just carried on, you know. But that was so embarrassing, So embarrassing. I wish the ground could have opened up and swallowed me. I felt such a fool. But there you go. These things happen.
Lucky it was Panto though, and you could kind of brush it into the carpet.
Well,
and
yes. We were able to wriggle out of it. Yeah.
Have you ever taken any costumes or props home from productions that you've been in?
What for what reason?
Just as mementos.
Oh, well, yes, I have. I've got all my You Rang Me Lord costumes because at the end of the series, I didn't want them going anywhere. So I bought them. I bought them from the wardrobe department, put them in a suitcase, and I've got them in a cupboard in the flat here. And I've actually, we had a reunion a couple of years ago in Budapest, in Hungary, because You Rang Me Lord actually is still huge in Hungary. They watch it every single day. It's on television every day. And they love it over there. And we had a big event, 5 of us from the cast, because there are not many of us left, but 5 of us from the cast went over. And I took the costume over there, and I was on a particular queue in this huge room, jam-packed with 900 people in it, fans from all over Hungary. And all the Hungarian actors that had dubbed our voices were on the stage talking at this particular time. And then the girl who was emceeing it all rang for some drinks. And then at the given cue, I'm dressed in James Twelvetree's costume, the stripy jacket, the black hat. And I walk on with this tray of drinks. And the noise that the audience made, I've never heard anything like it in my life. But I'm so glad on that occasion that I had the costume, that I legitimately bought it and legitimately used it. And I hope to be able to do that again. I hope to have another event next year at some point. It's been postponed twice already, obviously because of COVID. But we're hoping next year that we can get another event together over there in Budapest, because that was such fun, real fun. And that's the only costume I have. My Heidi High costume, I didn't keep that one. Because it was really no use to me, you know. I got a yellow coat that I sort of trotted out occasionally years ago for events like opening fates or whatever, you know. Sometimes it was used to do, but I didn't want that. That's been sold. It was sold off. A lot of the costumes from the BBC wardrobes for various shows that had finished got sold off by auction. And it was a comedian, actually, a stand-up comic, bought my Heidi High, my Spike outfit. And he wrote to me to authenticate it, so I had to send him a letter of authentication. So that, yes, this is my costume, you know. And I wore it, Spike in Heidi High, and that was, you know. So no, but I've got my James Twelvetree's outfits. I've got all those. I'm pleased to say. Yeah.
So obviously you've performed in lots of different sized theatres. What is your favourite theatre to perform in?
Oh, well, it comes back to the Grand, you know, doesn't it? The Grand at Wolverhampton, because my association with that theatre goes back to when I was a small boy. It was the very first theatre. Growing up in Walsall, you see, there wasn't a theatre, there were cinemas, but all the theatres had long closed before I was born. And the Grand, apart from Birmingham Rep, but the Grand was nearest my local theatre. And I actually took myself over when I was 11 on the bus one Saturday afternoon, because when I was a lad, I used to go to the pictures most Saturdays and see a film. But I thought this particular, I've seen in the local Walsall local paper, The Observer, that there was a theatre at Wolverhampton called the Grand, and they were doing these plays. And I thought, oh, I'll go and see a play. That'll be interesting. It'll be different. So I took myself over on the bus from Walsall to Wolverhampton, and I went and sat and watched a Saturday matinee of this creaky old comedy. It was a dreadful old piece about an Italian ice cream company, and their daughter had fallen in love with a motorcycle grease monkey, you know, a rocker, if you like. It was a very dated piece, but you know, it was what they were doing then, and it was in the days when Wolverhampton Grand was a weekly repertory theatre. We're talking about 1957, 58 here, and it was, they were doing weekly rep, and in fact, at the curtain call, I remember the leading man stepped forward after the applause and announced what next week's play was going to be, because they always used to do that, you know. Standing ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And next week we'll be doing, you know, starring this and starring that, and hoping to see you there and all the rest. But of course, the regular audiences used to come to every play anyway. But it was such a beautiful theatre. It still is such a beautiful theatre. I'm very proud to be associated with it. And I'm also president of the Friends of the Theatre as well now. Which is an honour to me. So really, it has to be said, the Grand Theatre in Wolverhampton means an awful lot to me, more than perhaps any other theatre. I'm patron of the Grange Playhouse in Walsall, which is an amateur theatre, where I started when I started working in amateur drama. I started there at the Grange, and they asked me to be patron a few years ago, so I'm patron of that now as well. So that means a lot to me too, but on a different scale from the Grand, obviously. But yeah, those are my two favourite theatres.
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Don't do it. No, a lot of young actors ask that question. You know, what do you think I should do? Or would I like to be an actor? I always say don't do it just to, you know, to be funny, if you like, to get a reaction. But you know, it's a great leveller, our business. If you are determined and dedicated, you will get on to a certain degree, but you've got to have the wherewithal to back it up. You know, at the end of the day. And if you, I've been very lucky, but you know, working with people I have worked with and the breaks I've had, but you know, you've got to have the talent, I suppose, and the dedication to back it up, because it can be heartbreakingly disappointing sometimes, our business, and it's very unpredictable. You know, so really, I would probably have said that to my younger self, don't do it. But my younger self was determined to do it, and I did do it. There we are. There we are. So
you touched a little bit on Panto. What is your favourite Panto to be in?
Well, I think one of the favourites for me was Dick Whittington. It's a lovely story. But I've never done Cinderella, because I've never played, in my younger days, I'd never got round to, nobody ever asked me to play buttons. And there's no dame in Cinderella. Now, the two ugly sisters, usually played by men, but I don't do ugly sister, at least I've only ever been dame. You know, that's a different matter. And the ugly sisters are grotesque, and they're baddies, you know, they're villains. And that's never really appealed to me. So that's a pity I've never done Cinderella. I could play Cinderella, because I mean, last year at the Grand in Dick Whittington with Sue Pollard, I played Alderman Fitzwarren, which was the first time I played a man in pantomime for 30 years or more, which was a first. So I could play Baron Hardup if they did Cinderella. I suppose I could do that in Cinderella, but I've never done Cinderella. And I've always wanted to play Mother Goose, because Mother Goose is a role for an actor, because she's humble, she's sweet, and then she becomes rich, and she becomes hard and nasty for a time, when the golden egg gets the better of her. You know, and she sees the error of her way. She goes from rags to riches, and from riches back to rags. And it's a nice role to play. Also, there's a nice role as a dame for the nanny or the nurse in Babes in the Wood, which of course they don't do anymore. They do what they now call the Adventures of Robin Hood, because in Babes in the Wood, Robin Hood was the principal boy, Maid Marian was the principal girl, the villain was the Sheriff of Nottingham. And now they just do that, because apparently you're not allowed to kidnap children and take them into the woods and murder them anymore. You know, it's a story, it's a pantomime, kids love it, kids love those kind of stories. But no, political correctness has taken all that away from us now, and we just have to be doing the Adventures of Robin Hood. There's no nanny in that. It's the last time I did Robin Hood, about 4 years ago, I played a dame, but I was literally one of the merry men in a frock. So I was Robin Hood's cook. You know, where does that come from? You know, that's rewriting history now for me. You know, I don't care for it. But, you know, that Mother Goose would have been nice to be done. I've never done it, but it's a nice role. Maybe one day, who knows? Never say never.
Definitely. Who would you most like to co-star with in Panto? Like, who would be your dream co-star?
Oh my, that's a good one. I mean, I couldn't go farther than top last year with Sue Pollard, my dear old mate. You know, she and I hit it off. She's been on the phone to me this morning. I've got a little chat with her this morning. But she was great fun to work with. I mean, I'd love to work with Sue again because, you know, we know each other so well. I don't think I can't think of anyone. I mean, the choice is limitless out there, really. But who knows? Who knows?
Right, just to finish off, I've got a quick fire round.
A quick fire round?
Quick fire round. It's not as scary as it sounds.
Okay. Snap answers, you want?
Okay.
Answers, okay.
So, tea or coffee?
Tea.
Sun or rain?
Sorry?
Sun or rain?
Oh, sun.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Musical or play?
Play.
Comedy or tragedy?
Comedy.
Sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Meat or veg?
Meat.
Hugs or kisses?
Both.
Night out or night in?
Night in.
Tour or West End run?
West End run would be nice.
Favourite film?
Oh, It's a Wonderful Life.
Nice. Favourite book?
There are so many, but Dracula takes some beating.
And last one, ultimate comfort food?
Roast chicken.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining me, Jeff. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Oh, my pleasure, my darling. Hope to see you again very soon.
Yeah, speak to you soon. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.